Welcome to the Marshall News and Views Show. I'm Ellayne Conyers, and my guest today is Superintendent Scott Monson, who is the superintendent of the Marshall schools, the public schools, I should say. I just about said private. No, you're not that.
Not yet.
Public
I don't plan to be.
And, we've had you on here before, but now it's a new school year, and I'm sure you've got a lot of interesting things to share with us about this new school year, right?
Absolutely. You know, summer is a little bit of an opportunity for everybody to catch their breath and kind of reflect on the previous school year, and there isn't a lot of downtime, if any, for us, because then we're full speed ahead getting ready for the new school year.
Sure.
And you know, now that students are in the buildings, it's an even more exciting
time. Exactly. Yeah, it was interesting coming out today and seeing the parking lots full. That was a good feeling.
It is, and I think I believe that students are ready to get back. You know, the early start to the activity season this year maybe is a positive thing, but I think kids are ready to get back into the buildings. Sure. I think parents are ready for school to start. I know that we are. I think staff was kind of itching a little bit to get going. So, you know, we're every year at the start of the school year, and I guess I've been doing this 25 or 26 years. Okay. It's I do look forward to the first day of school very much, and had an opportunity to get out in all the buildings yesterday and just spend a little bit of time interacting with staff and seeing what's going on and talking to a few of our students, and just exciting times for everybody. We're really happy with how things have gotten started. Good,
real good. Now we're talking about the start time. Now next year there'll be a different start time, right?
There will be. Last year during the 2014-15 school year, we did a survey and we asked our students, our staff, our parents, and our community members, what do you think about the flexible learning year, specifically the early start? Because that's the aspect of the flexible learning year that affects most of our stakeholders, if you will, and pretty resoundingly, everybody said we see benefits, but we don't like the early start. Okay. And you know, I think it was about 70 or 73% of the folks who completed the survey, and that was over 1,500 respondents said do something different with the early start. So our calendar for next year, we haven't developed it yet, but our calendar for next year will include a post-Labor Day start, which will be different for us for 6 years now as part of the FLY Consortium. We've started school 2 weeks before Labor Day, but we'll let out this year, I guess in 2016, we'll let out in mid-May. I don't know the exact date right offhand, and then we'll have the kids will have a pretty extended summer break where we won't go back to school until probably the 2nd or 3rd of September, which is after Labor Day, and you know, so it'll be a little bit of a change for us. There'll be some adjustments, but as we develop our calendar for next year, we're going to need to try to take a look at what was good about the early start and see how much, if any of that, we can incorporate into a calendar for 2016-17.
Yeah. So the reason for starting early was because you say a flexible learning program?
It's called the Flexible Learning Year, which Marshall has been a part of Flexible Learning Year Consortium of school districts. I believe there are 23 of us who 2 years ago applied to, well, it would have been 5 years ago now at the beginning of this process, applied to the Commissioner of Education and said, hey, we have a list of reasons why we'd like to work together and start school before Labor Day, 2 weeks before Labor Day. It does take commissioners' authority because state law is that schools, with very limited exceptions, can start school prior to Labor Day. So it took commissioners' authority for us to be able to do that, and we were granted that, like I said, 5 years ago. It was in 3-year planning cycles, if you will, and we're now finishing up the 3rd year of our second 3-year cycle. And about, from what I've seen, about 1/3 of the districts that belong to the FLY Consortium and start school prior to Labor Day are not going to be in it next year. About 1/3 have chosen and indicated that they're going to remain in the fly, and there's still about a third that aren't really sure
Okay.
what's going on. They're still gathering information. So our group of schools is going to look vastly different next year.
Yeah. What do you think that they felt was better starting later?
I think what the surveys showed, Ellayne, is that you know, our students and their parents and families are so busy in the summertime with activities and work and everything else. And what the comment that came up repeatedly was, we really would like to have that extra time in August when, I would say two things. One, we'd like to have that extra time in August to do family things together.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, kids are involved in baseball, softball, volleyball, track, everything in the summer months, and they don't have a lot of time as a family to spend together. So we heard that comment frequently. And then the second thing we heard is the heat in August.
Oh, sure.
And I understand both of those. We're at the mercy of Mother Nature when it comes to the temperatures. And whether it be August, September, or October, we can have 80, 90-degree days any time of the year. But, you know, when 70+% of our stakeholders, the folks who we work for and work with, say we don't like the early start, and we just hadn't seen the type of academic growth that we were hoping for with the extra time before the start of
That's what I was really wondering, if there was academic growth, but it really didn't.
It wasn't there. Admittedly, Ellayne, it's really hard to determine what would our test scores have looked like if we didn't start early. We'll never know that. And I think I believe that our students take our tests seriously. And that their parents and families help them prepare for them. I know that our staff work really hard getting kids ready for those assessments. So to not have seen the type of consistent growth that we anticipated, we've just, you know, really, it's one of the reasons we went into the fly, and one of the reasons that we're now going to go a different direction.
Good. I'm just going to add one thing with that too, is years ago, with so many of our farming community, the 4-H was a big deal with kids. I think that's, I know it's really kind of died down because I was associated with that for several years. But you know, the smaller towns around, I would assume that a lot of their kids have to go to the state fair with their projects. Well, that would cut into the school year, you know. So I don't know, but Marshall isn't it? I don't think that there's that many students involved with the state fair that they'd have to go to. But anyway.
And I would agree, Ellayne. I think the number of participants in 4-H, and I don't know this, but I think it's gone down.
It's really gone down.
And we never want to prevent anybody from going to the state fair if they need to or want to or whatever. We've always tried to be upfront and open and honest and say, go ahead, we understand that.
And do that. Good. So, are there any other changes with the school? I think you were on the front page of the paper today.
Yeah, I was. You know, a couple things that I would mention. One is our enrollment. We finished the school year last year with, in kindergarten through 12th grade, we had 2,314 students. We knew that our enrollment was going to increase for a variety of reasons, but as of tomorrow, we expect there to be 2,466 students, which is a 152 student increase. Now, I don't get real excited about enrollment until a week or two of school has gone by and you know, all the movement and whatnot has happened. But that's probably twice what we anticipated our growth would be for this year. So we're really happy about that. On the other hand, we don't have room for these students, and in a couple cases, we'd like to add sections of, you know, a particular grade because of a bubble or whatever, and we have class-sized targets that we really shoot for at each grade level, and we're at or above those targets, but in those cases, we don't have a place to put the kids, so we're trying to really look at how do we accommodate the growth that we're seeing right now, and short term, how do we accommodate that and help kids get the help that they need? Because you know, when you have 24 or 25 students in a class with a teacher, they don't get as much help as if there's 20 or 21 or something like that. So we're taking a short-term look at that, and it's a good challenge to have. But we're also, which we've talked about, before the facility study committee, we're also taking a long-range look at our needs and the type of enrollment projection growth that we've seen for this year is what we expect for the next 8 to 10 years. Not at this maybe steep of a rate, but we definitely anticipate that type of growth, and we know that when that happens, we just don't have the sites, the rooms, the space, both inside and outside our buildings to put all of these kids. So that's been a good challenge to have, but yet one where we kind of at times go, wow, what are we going to do? Because we need to do something. So
I know we've talked before about the fact that Marshall is growing with economically and everything that affects other areas too. So we talked about, well, it's having to look at larger facilities or more room is actually a good problem to have, but that doesn't make it an easy problem. It's something you have to look at it. And even the high school, I was thinking, they won't have to build on or add to the high school for a while because that's so new. But the enrollment is increasing there too, of course.
It is. Probably the high school is our building that's bulging the most, actually. It is.
Okay.
And we've had some people say, well, why didn't you build the high school bigger 10 years ago? And we've gone back and looked at the projections that we utilized then, and they're pretty accurate, probably within the last 2 or 3 years, but now with the type of growth coming in to the district at the elementary grades, those are the things that we probably hadn't anticipated. So, all of our plans, tentative ones, moving forward, for our facility study include doing something to expand the high school. And they need to, because this high school was designed for roughly 800 students, and I believe right now we have about 850 students that attend all or parts of their day here.
And well, the advantage for where the high school is located, there's room if you need to build on. And I know some of the schools, there isn't a lot of room.
There isn't.
I look at West Side and oh my, that's kind of crowded in. But that's one of our earlier schools.
Yeah, I would say West Side and Parkside both, are a little bit landlocked, if you will. And especially West Side, there's not a lot of room outside on the grounds or at that site. So that is something that we're looking at in terms of what do we do? You can always build up, so to speak, into the air, but you can't always expand your footprint a little bit. But it's been an exciting process.
And I think it's really good that you've got a committee of citizens that are working on all this too, and doing the survey and everything. Then you get a lot of input then from the community, which is really good.
It is. It has been a real treat, to be honest, to work with the facility study committee and just. To listen to the ideas and the perspectives and the opinions and the concerns. I think that the committee has done a really good job of, when they hear something, at church or at dinner or in their social group or wherever, they pass that along to the whole committee. And what that does, or what I believe that will do, is help us to make a better recommendation to the school board. But that's really been a treat working with them. And you mentioned the survey. We did put out kind of our first effort at how do we get input from those who aren't a part of the committee in terms of what's important as we move forward with our facilities plan. And we, the folks who responded, I want to say there were about 500 responses, which included some of our students, some of our staff, some of our parents, and quite a few of our community members. The responses that rose to the top, if you will, and came up most often were, you really need to take into account safety and security. It seems like an obvious one, but yet in today's world, and it's something that you have to really focus on. So we're going to incorporate that. Class sizes continues to be something that people are aware of, and we know that smaller class sizes definitely have a benefit when it comes to student achievement. You touched, or we kind of touched on something, Ellayne, the space at each site, making sure that there's adequate, appropriate space for kids to do their thing during recess, if you will.
That too, sure.
And even something like keeping the enrollment at a particular school building site manageable. You know, a couple of the plans that we reviewed had one facility growing as large as 1,400 or 1,500 students in one site. Obviously by adding on and whatnot, but the challenge with that is you lose that personal touch. So people have said, try to do what you can to keep things relatively small, that personal learning touch, that connection that kids can have, that's really important.
Sure.
Early childhood programming is another. Right now we have it in 2 different locations. We don't have room to expand. We're turning people away. It's really been and we don't want to do that. You know, we want all of our parents to have an opportunity for their children, their preschool children, to attend classes in the Marshall Public Schools, but we don't have space, we don't have slots, we don't have classrooms, and we don't have room to grow, so we recognize that that's a challenge as well. So we've got, I think, some really good input from that survey that our committee has looked at, and as we move forward, the next step for us is to say, okay, here's our remaining options, and let's almost do a checklist. Does this work for class size, yes or no? And quite honestly, I think all of them will work for class sizes. How about safety and security? No. Well, then we need to incorporate something into that plan. How about the personal learning environment, or keeping enrollment relatively small at each site? So it'll almost be like a checklist for us as we're going through and evaluating options.
Wow. Well, you got a lot of work ahead of you. You've done a lot, but there's still more out there.
there is. There's always more to do, you know, and that's the exciting thing. And other than spending time with our students and our staff, that's the challenge that I enjoy about my job. There's always more to do, and sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, but it's also exciting and rewarding too. So,
good. Well, that's really interesting. And so, anything else that's new or changing, or
a lot of continuation with different things going on from last year, Ellayne. We have a really large list of new licensed staff members this year. I think at our new teacher orientation we had 27 or 28 new teachers.
Oh, really?
So between this year and last year, I want to say about a quarter of our staff, or 25%, are new or within their first 2 years. That's not surprising. We're seeing an aging population of you know, our staff members, like a lot of companies or businesses or schools or whatever. And so, you know, we've had our new staff in now, and they've had an opportunity to get ramped up for the school year, and we're excited about the candidates that we're able to attract to our district. You know, we've still got our one-to-one initiative with our mobile devices, our laptops, and our iPads. We're in year 2 of a 3-year cycle with that, where last year 1st, 5th, 9th, and 10th graders each got their own device. 5th, 9th, and 10th were able to take them home with them. This year we'll have 1st, 5th, 9th, and 12th graders. So everyone at the high school will have their own laptop. At the middle school, 5th and 6th graders will have their own laptop. I call them a laptop. That's maybe not the exact term, but and then 1st and 2nd graders will have iPad carts that will be kept at the school. And then next year in 2016-17, we'll implement the 3rd year of that 3-year plan, and every student in 1st through 12th grade will either have access to their own device or will have their own device that they can take home with them. So that's an exciting thing that our staff has really been working hard on. Last year I had an opportunity just to walk through some of the buildings and talk to the students and say, hey, how do you like your laptop? Love it. You know, how's the battery? Great. What do you use it for? And it wasn't just about how they use it in class, it was about how they use it at home.
Sure.
And not all the time was it educationally relevant. They weren't always doing homework or whatever, but the students that I talked to were using it for things that are connected to or related to or supplementing their learning and the things that are taking place at the school. So excited about that. You know, excited about standards-based grading, standards-based learning, which we can talk about if you want to. We have for a number of years been really focusing on standards-based, we're calling it learning. It's more often referred to as standards-based grading. And you know, Ellayne, you and I might have got you probably did better than me, but I might have got a C+ in English when I was in 10th grade or 6th grade or whatever. Well, what does that really mean? I can talk, I can listen, I can write, but so what does that C+ really mean? Well, standards-based learning, as we call it, is really breaking down the English subject, if you will, English language arts, into specific standards, like, you know, has the ability to read grade level material, read or interpret, understand grade level material. I just made that up, but that might be a standard that we want to give students a grade on. Instead of saying in English language arts you're going to get a C+. Well, on that particular standard, we're really drilling in and asking our staff to assess students' progress on that. And we're going away from, we're not there yet with everybody, or with all of our buildings. We've got a phased-in approach, if you will, and I think a very deliberate approach to how we're going to make this happen. But we're going away from the A, B, C, D, F grades, and we're going more towards like a 1, 2, or 3, 1 being mastered. I've mastered that particular standard. And then in this way, when parents and students look at the report card, they can go, okay, I've mastered this standard, but I haven't yet mastered this one. And it gives them better insight into what do I need to get better at. A C+ or even an A or whatever in English doesn't tell the whole story. So we're really focusing on the standards and mastery and opportunities for, I'll say, reteaching or relearning. The other part of it too, Ellayne, or another part of it is a lot of times, and I did this as a business education teacher, 15% of my grade of all of my students was, were you punctual, did you participate, and were you prepared? Not that those aren't important things, but does that really reflect, should it really be reflected in a grade for, like what we're talking about, English language arts? So we're going to peel those out of there and still give staff an opportunity to weigh in and grade those things, if you will. But this is really, standards-based learning is really focused just on the standards that students are learning in each of their subject areas, and then not if they'll master the content, the skill or the content, but when they'll master it. So it's just maybe I'd say it's a way of doing things a little bit smarter, at least I believe so, and communicating more clearly with parents about the progress of their son or daughter. So,
and for the student too, to understand better too where you need to improve.
Absolutely, and we hope that students will then be able to look at that and go, okay, I need to do more or better or focus on this particular standard, and really, I think, take ownership of their learning, which not everybody does, you know, especially depending on their grade level. So we're continuing to move forward with that. We've piloted it, we've implemented it, we're in certain schools and grade levels. We're going to continue to communicate it. We understand it's a huge change for parents. Well, what do you mean my son or daughter doesn't get an A or a B anymore? And so we understand how important it is to communicate why we're doing this, what it means, what questions do you have, and just being kind of slowing down and being deliberate with our planning to continue to implement this. But I really, I'm confident that it'll lead to better student achievement, better communications between the school and home, and maybe clearer communications and then hopefully more engaged students as
Yes.
well. And our staff have put a ton of time into it, and what they're doing is really good stuff. And I think at times we're kind of out in the front of a lot of our neighbors in terms of what we're doing with this and how we're doing it.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Oh, that's interesting. It's interesting how schools have changed, or education has changed over the years, and it's certainly better. And like you say, with the introduction of you know, computers or little whatever, you know, laptops or whatever you call them, and I've heard people say, "Oh my gosh, why do they need that?" That's today's world, is holding a cell phone or something in your hand, and so the kids like that. They know how to do it, and this will help them to learn. Besides, it's just, I think it's fantastic.
You're spot on, Ellayne. It is the world that they live in.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of us, it's the world that we live in. You know, I have a computer, obviously, at work. I have a laptop. I have an iPad. And I have a tablet, and I have a smartphone, and I use all of them frequently.
Sure.
So we're a very digital age,
Yes.
or we live in a digital age, a digital world. Students are more engaged when there's technology involved.
Oh, yeah.
And with I think with their generation of video games, television, things like that, that we need to continue to embrace technology to keep them engaged and to keep them hopefully expanding on their, again, that ownership of their learning and that excitement and the overall experience. You know, and I probably to some extent, a lot of us were kind of the stand and deliver type teacher. I mean, and I love to lecture because I tried to make it interactive, but yet the folks, those of us, myself included, who lecture frequently, sometimes we lose people along the way. And even like in my workshop speech to all of our staff, I had them take out their smartphones, and through a program that I was able to access, they were able to give me instantaneous feedback on a couple of things, and just to keep them engaged. And I don't know if that, hopefully they liked it. I enjoyed it, I guess, and I could see right on the screen what everybody thought as I looked up there and said, you know, how was your year last year, and what do you think as we move forward, and things like that.
That's wonderful. Wow, that's great. Well, it's so exciting to hear everything that's going on, and it's going to new things that are going to happen. And it was really great to have you here. And I just want to tell our audience, you know, we're not waving at each other here. We've got some flies that we have to.
There is one that's being a pest.
So, anyway. So it's good to have you here. Good luck, and we want you back soon to hear how all of this is going. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Ellayne. Thanks for having me on.
Yep.